Hi, and welcome to my message for the Objective Personality class. My name is Brian Hanelt, and I'm 21 years old, and I am submitting this video to be objectively typed. The type that I think I am is masculine, feminine, NIFE, blast, sleep, consume, play. I am not too attached to this type. I just want to have a type. I just want to be given a type and then be able to work from there, because I think it's helpful to know your type. And also, I know that you guys like to type clients because it helps you learn more about each column and the functions themselves. And you like getting unique types. And if my type is what I think it is, I'm pretty sure it would probably be decently unique. Even though I don't know that for sure. So yeah, I think I could, talk about the type that I think I am. I could talk about some of my life experiences. I know you guys have a checklist that you prefer for us to go through. Some things like, what is the best and worst things that have happened to you, and what do you think is wrong with the world, and what do you do on an average day or week? So I guess I could start with some of those questions. What do I do on an average day or week? In an average day or week, I spend most of my time sleep processing. And whenever I actually have to do anything, like go to the grocery store or do an assignment or go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I often feel a lot of anxiety about it. But I still work on doing things anyways, because if I don't, I'll just remain unable to do things, and that's not a great solution. So yeah, sometimes right, so kind of a feeling of anxiety, and I think that has to do with the sensory, but I'm not sure. But all I know is, if I'm being honest, I do get nervous about some very basic tasks. Of course, the more I do things, the nervousness goes away to the point of it ever even happening was absurd. So I saw that with myself in when I had my job in Grass Valley, or when I started just I did Kung Fu in Grass Valley. I started going to the grocery store and working for my grandpa in Grass Valley. And that was before I moved to college. And those tasks started to get easier when I did them more. And by easier, I mean I wasn't nervous before I did them as much as when I started. So back to the question of, what do I do on a daily or weekly basis? Yeah, so on a daily basis, I'm trying to get assignments done and make sure things in my house are kind of in order. And I feel a lot of sort of pressure when I don't do my assignments and I fail at my assignments, I feel kind of a dreadful feeling. And so when I complete my assignments, I feel definitely a lack of that dreadful feeling. So that's a big part of what's motivating me. Maybe my weekly schedule is I'm trying to force myself to go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Of course, there are some weeks where I fail to go entirely, but I'm starting to get better at that. It's just that some nights at Jiu-Jitsu I roll so hard that I'll get home and I'll have some injuries, and sometimes I won't sleep very well as a result of the injuries, or I just won't be able to go to the next class because I've got some injuries. And the reason why that happens is probably because my level of skill isn't very high up yet. So I don't really have the bodily control that a really skilled jiu-jitsu fighter has. So that is definitely a point of progress, but I'm making progress. And in fact, last night I went to jiu-jitsu and I did great. I strategically am trying to roll with some smaller people because that will just build me up slower and slower. And I'm not very big. I don't want to roll with people who are way smaller than me because that's abusive, but I'm really not doing that. I'm just rolling with people who are, the same size as me. And like last night I rolled with a guy who was a little smaller than me, but then I asked him his weight and he said 145, and I said, well, my weight's 140, and I was like maybe at least a head taller than him. And so maybe he lied about his weight. I'm not really sure, because it seems like it would make more sense if that guy was more around 130, but he actually tapped me out, even though maybe I was going easy, but also I kind of wasn't. But yeah, it's just the road of development with jiu-jitsu. And the other thing I'm doing throughout the week is, I think I failed to mention this, but my major right now is psychology, and I'm majoring in psychology at CSU Chico. After being raised and spending my whole life in Grass Valley, California. And Grass Valley, California is about 10 hours south of Portland, and maybe an hour to the east, in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. It's a little mining town. And near Grass Valley, California is Nevada City, which is a little town, and Penn Valley is a little town near there. South of there is Auburn, and a little bit south of Auburn is Roseville, and south of there is Sacramento. So yeah, Grass Valley is sort of in between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe in terms of kind of meeting them halfway in the middle. And Grass Valley's like I said, it's got this little minor town history, and sort of that's the aesthetic of the town, is like an old-fashioned mining town. There's still relics from the miner times, and by that I mean there are these big cannons that they used to blast away the mountains for gold. It was gold mining people, and Grass Valley is about 2,000 feet in elevation. It's got a nice little economy that's mostly, I think, based around older people. But Grass Valley is a good place for people to raise their kids, and so there's a good amount of youth that lives there because people retire there or raise their kids there. But there's not a whole lot of industry or jobs in Grass Valley. I think the biggest job sectors are actually engineering, and there's some little pocket of software engineers in Grass Valley, and that's actually a decent sector in the town. And then there's, of course, retail, sort of small businesses and that sort of thing in Grass Valley. It's a small town. The main high school in Grass Valley is Nevada Union High School, but plenty of kids go to Bear River High School. Those are the two main high schools. Bear River's a little bit more towards Auburn, like I said, whereas Nevada Union High School is right in the center of Grass Valley. And the elementary school I went to was a small little elementary school called Clear Creek School, sort of off in the bushes, but really close to my house, like only about 7 minutes away from my house. Population of Grass Valley might be about 30,000, I think, maybe less than that. But in general, sort of like a middle class town with a pretty high ratio of well, the interesting thing about being from Grass Valley is it's not racially diverse, but it's very politically diverse. And one of the complaints about Grass Valley is if you go to anywhere else in California, there's so much more racial diversity in terms of Black, Latino, Asian, Hispanic. Grass Valley has very little diversity at all. For whatever reason, I think I would guess that it's because they haven't really expanded the housing market, and Grass Valley is kind of a little bubble. Yeah, not a lot of diversity up there. In fact, I really don't know the facts of why it's not diverse at all. But what I do know is that it's very diverse in politics, and specifically Nevada City to the north is really left-leaning, and Penn Valley to the west is really conservative. And Nevada City's sort of up more in the mountains, and then Penn Valley, it flattens out. And the Yuba River is where a lot of us spend a lot of time, and the Yuba River sort of trickles through Nevada City, Grass Valley, and Penn Valley. So the Yuba River kind of unites us, but it's definitely got that political dynamic, and in Grass Valley, there's a lot of a meeting point, but there's very little contentious sort of feeling. It's like everyone just lives in the town, and there's no political divides. It's like we're all mixed together, storefront to storefront between conservative and liberal. There's no feeling of tension and no feeling of struggle. It's just this feeling of, I'd say it's probably closer to a feeling of just everyone's equally disoriented, to where they don't know what should be or what shouldn't be going on. It's Grass Valley's rural, so it takes a long time to drive anywhere. It takes me about 20 minutes to get into town by car. And people sort of come and go because there's not a lot of industry there. So it's kind of like this little, prop town, maybe. It definitely doesn't have the feel of a really industrial place or a place with a lot of, people thinking the same way. I don't know if there's a better word for that. Like, people thinking with, I'm sorry, I don't know the word. I guess maybe like homogeneous thinking. There's not really that. It's more like Grass Valley has a spirit of just almost just like cuteness. The town is just, it's almost like being raised in a theme park or something. I don't know. It's it's a funny place to have grown up. But I went to Clear Creek Elementary School with about 160 people, and my experiences there were the bedrock of my my life growing up with other people. So that for a long time was, where was my tribe, and what was the people that I knew, and the authorities in my life were from there, and any of the activities I did were through there. I was very shy growing up, very shy, timid, especially when I was placed in the context of other people. I became very, very shy. But at home, I could be rowdy, I could be loud, I would throw tantrums, I would cry loudly, and of course home was my brother, myself, my mom, and my dad, living out on a road called Indian Springs Ranch Road in a house on about 20 acres, and the house was a 2-story home, and I lived there my whole life, and my parents still live there, and the walls of our house were like a textured white, and the floors of our house were vinyl, and I did a lot of fun playing, and I always was able to play. And I had my older brother who's 5 years older than me, and as a little kid, I got to play a lot. We got to play video games. We played with a lot of plastic toys. We didn't play outside as much, but we definitely played outside plenty. We especially liked video games growing up. My dad, from a young age, had a computer for me, and I remember he set me up with the computer from a very young age. My dad, I think, is maybe an INTJ, and that is to say he's got NI and TE as saviors, and he's always loved computers his whole life, or at least since his 20s when he started getting obsessed with computers. And he sort of started out with the whole movement, and he decided, when he was a young man, his dad was a land surveyor, and when he was a young man, he thought that he would just be like a blue-collar worker. He worked at Kmart for a long time, and he worked at Magic Mountain for a long time. He thought he probably would just end up being like a blue-collar guy just like his dad. And of course his dad was a land surveyor, so his dad's job was pretty complicated. And but he I'm sorry, I was just thinking about what type my grandpa is, and I got distracted. He thought he might be a blue-collar worker, and I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by thinking about my grandpa's type. I think my grandpa's probably an ESTP, and there's some femininity in him on the surface, and then below that's some masculinity, so it might be feminine TI and masculine FE. He's very suspicious of people, my grandpa. I think he might be SETI, with masculine SE and feminine TI. I'm not sure about that. That would make him double masculine, which would make sense, but he's got this femininity about him, and maybe that is the feminine DI. He definitely seems to be masculine with the tribe, but he can also be feminine with in a relationship, you know. It's hard to say because I don't know the definitions very well yet. I'm still practicing. But yeah, now that I've got that out of my system, I'll go back to talking about my family and details about my story so that you can understand better who I am. My dad he got really into computers. He went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo to get an electrical engineering degree. There he met my mom at Cal Poly in the same degree. And they were basically best friends immediately. And they sort of stayed buddies all throughout college. And they just had some instant connection. And my mom and dad, it's hard to understand their relationship. Sorry, I just got a text. It's hard to understand their relationship. They're both IJs, and I think probably both play last. But that's beside the point. The point is they met at Cal Poly. They got electrical engineering degrees. They worked at IBM and HP, Hewlett-Packard, and they were just making the money of the technology industry and working with people and making lots of, ISTP friends. And my dad has like two of his best friends, I think, are like ISTPs, and they're still working with those guys, and maybe there's some TE in there, but a lot of ST friends, my dad's told me he often complains that in a meeting, people will be going over detail, and he doesn't know the big picture, and he says, just tell me the big picture, and then I can know the details from there, so I know what's going on. My dad, I'm pretty sure he's lead NI. My mom and dad, I really tried to advocate in my own mind for the fact that they could be deciders, but it just wasn't happening. They're both such single observers, and that's pretty firm in my mind at this point. And same with my brother, who I talk about type with a lot. In fact, me and him get to discuss a lot, and it's helped our growth really progress in terms of typing. And for example, Jesse and I saw that Felicia Day was NE with TE, and we typed her as that. We thought she was play, consume, blast, sleep, because she played a lot of video games, and we watched her play games, and we thought that she had a lot of consume stuff. And then with her blast, we thought we might have seen that she's not very controlling about her blast. But we still have so much to learn. You guys have seen so many more facts, such a greater array of information. And basically, I defer to you. I kind of think of it with like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, you can be a white belt and be questioning a black belt about does jiu-jitsu work, but you should get to black belt level before you really start to question does jiu-jitsu work, and that's sort of been my philosophy, is just stick with Dave and Shan as mentors because they have a lot of proof of concept, and they're so good at not letting their subjectivity get in the way. They're more humble in their thinking. Maybe that's because of TE that you both have. I just don't know. All I know is that a part of me trusts your system more than the systems I've seen on YouTube. I actually majored in computer science for 2 years. I went to Chico State, moving away from home. And at that time, I had a lot of feelings of inferiority. I felt like I was not good enough, and it's somehow related to my masculinity, but it also just related to my standing in the tribe. And I felt that I wasn't good enough, and I went to Chico almost impulsively just to kickstart things. And I decided I would major in computer science, just almost like doing it for the hell of it. Like, you know, I had a lot of good rationales for why, but I'd never liked taking apart computers. I'd never liked coding. I'd never liked anything, but I still majored in computer science. And I tried that major for about 4 semesters, and I could spend a whole video talking about why I thought it might be a good idea for me to do computer science, but ultimately it just wasn't for me. And what I kind of fell back on one random day as I was thinking about why computer science wasn't working for me, I kind of fell back on, well, you know, I did get a lot out of the Myers-Briggs tests I took in high school. You know, in high school I got an INFP. I had gotten INFP twice and INFJ once. So I was pretty sure I was an introvert, and I was pretty sure I was a judging type, and I was pretty sure I was a feeler, and I didn't know what intuitive meant, and I didn't know what sensing meant, actually until pretty far into knowing you guys. So I didn't know what that meant for a long time. But I guessed I was probably an intuitive. I just didn't know what those meant at all, you know? Like, sensing my 5 senses, intuition, what? I just did not understand what that was until later. But I came back to the Myers-Briggs because I had a good experience with it in high school, and I felt like it was something where I could... It was like a safety rope or something I could grab onto, because I was sort of spinning at, you know, in my computer science major, sort of a negative spiral of trying to figure out what is my path forward. And because this major I did for 2 years didn't work, what am I going to do? What is my path forward? How can I succeed in life? What can I do that I will really enjoy? And I realized that came back to the question of who am I? And what I struggled with that question is, well, everyone tells me that who I am is not discovered but built. Who I am is a product of the people around me. Who I am is because of how I was raised. Who I am is a matter of nurture and not nature. And if that's true, then I should be able to do computer science completely easily, because all you have to do is practice. All you have to do is practice, and you'll become the best champion of anything. All you have to do is practice, and you can become the greatest champion ever of this or that, or you can become the best businessman or the best this. And I was having to wrestle with that idea, and yeah, that's it. I was trying to figure out exactly that. And so I went to the Myers-Briggs because maybe I had some kind of instinct that, personality type is, there's clearly a pattern of who I am and something to my nature. I'm not just nothing, it seems like I already am something a little bit, maybe you could put it in terms of I'm not a blank slate. I'm not a blank canvas. There's already something there. and what is it? And so I went back to the Myers-Briggs, and then I started to see that maybe I'm not an INFP, but an INFJ. And that changed a lot for me. And around this time, I also discovered what the functions were. And that is what changed everything. Because when I took the Myers-Briggs tests in high school, they never, ever told me what a function is. And now I realize that the function is at the foundation of, the Myers-Briggs stuff. And when, there's the book called Personality Types, where Carl Jung lists his observations about basically 8 perspectives on the world. And then, Isabel Myers and her mother, I think her mother's name was Catherine Briggs, they basically saw these 8 functions, they got excited, and, they wanted to know, how do these apply to me? And so they spent some time trying to figure that out. They wanted to know for themselves, like, how do these apply to me, and is this true? And so they studied it for a long time, and then they came up with the 4-letter system. And they came up with a 4-letter system, and that that is what I learned about in high school. But I never learned what a function was in high school. I only learned about the 4 letters, I, N, F, J, E, S, T, P. Those 4 letters are all I learned about. So I didn't know what a function was. And when I learned what a function was, that changed how I saw it. And it made it really a lot more useful to me. And that actually made me get really excited. That was a really exciting discovery. And for maybe a couple weeks or months, I was sort of obsessed with this new idea of the functions. And I started memorizing the function stack compared to each type. But originally, I was just really interested in which function stack do I have. If I can play with this function idea, maybe it's completely wrong, but which function stack would I have if this thing were real? And I decided that I'm not lead FI. I decided that I'm probably lead NI. And of course, there are a lot of videos how being lead NI makes you a heroic, wizard who can see through time and is amazing. And that also excited me because I thought, well, what if that is true? How could a whole community be wrong about this? And then I learned about FE versus TE and how FE can be a very cool function. And then I learned about how people are very excited about the INFJ. And at first I didn't know why, but I thought, well, if I am an INFJ, then is there something exciting about me? So sort of this all pulled me back into Myers-Briggs, and I started to get more and more attached to maybe the idea that I am that stack of functions. And then of course I met you guys, and at first I was looking at Frank James. I was looking at a handful of just different YouTubers who were talking about the INFJ, and I listened to Megan Lavota talk about the INFJ type, and I thought what she said kind of struck with me, so I thought maybe I'm not an INFP, maybe I'm an INFJ. And then I saw a guy named C.S. Joseph, sort of the algorithm, I'm talking about the journey the algorithm sort of took me on. And then I saw Talking with Famous People. And then I was watching Frank James, and he said, I get my stuff from Dave's Superpowers. So I liked him a lot. And then that led me to you guys. And then I saw that you guys had done interviews with Megan Lavota and Frank James. And I was just sort of assessing everybody's character. I was just kind of looking like okay, who can I trust here, you know? And I was going through and I was deciphering, like, okay, this is important to me, you know? How am I going to discern who's right and who's wrong? Because, you know, I was starting to get different facts and different realizations that, that works with this. Like, you know, it was starting to come together that the functions are real, and I knew that I had no proof. I knew that I couldn't explain this to someone else without them not believing in me, but I still was really excited about it. And when I started reading more about my functions, not my type, it led me to you guys. You guys taught me about the functions and how each function is much more concrete than we realize. And at this point where I am now, the point I'm talking about was last November. So it's coming up on like 10 months ago. At the point where I am now, I've almost completely and utterly, like in March, I basically cut myself off from all the other YouTubers and just started following you guys. And I'm not sure why I did that. But it probably speaks well to your work. I just kept following my instincts and thinking, you know, well, Dave and Shan are talking about the scientific method here. Basically, I'm describing the process of me becoming your fan, you know, and sort of shying away from the other ones. At first, I really liked C.S. Joseph, actually, and I liked some of his ideas, and I also really liked talking with famous people. I liked how he talked about a polar function way back 10 months ago. But since then, it's just been a screaming ride of learning. And that's all been through you guys, you know. And I left them behind, even though I felt a good chemistry with them, kind of, in terms of, you know, understanding what is going on. You know, a lot of people aren't function oriented. And, you know, as far as I knew in high school, the 4 letters were the functions, you know. But I just thought, I was just slowly starting to learn what you guys know. And I'm trying to say that process was a really big deal to me, you know. And something I'm very thankful for. And it wasn't all you guys. I learned other stuff from other people. But, you know, when I started kind of putting faith in you. And what's funny is I feel sometimes slightly distant from you guys in terms of your opinions. And but then I have faith in your objectivity, and I realize that maybe I'm closer in type to C.S. Joseph or Eric from talking with famous people, and I'm simply liking the chemistry of my type with their type. 40-minute mark. I really just kind of decided I'm going to trust Dave and Shan's objectivity, and especially the fact that your types look the same. That really got me, and I couldn't shake that. That was really a big deal to me. And around the time that I learned that, I started talking to my brother about this. And my brother thought he was an INFJ because all his stuff said he was a counselor. You know, he's clearly an IJ, he's clearly a feeler, and he's clearly introverted. Or, I mean, he's clearly a J, he's clearly a feeler, he's clearly introverted. So, of course, all those tests called him an INFJ. You know, I think it would have been closer to call him an ISFJ. Because right now, me and my brother both think that he's an INFP jumper, which is FISI. And that's what we think he is. and we think that I am maybe NIFE. I say that because I think I'm DE. I think I'm OI. I think I'm a single observer. I think I'm probably a feeler. There's a chance I'm an INTJ. And frankly, now that I'm listening to your stuff, I've really left behind the community uprising of the INFJ. But just as a human, you can't help but be attracted by other people potentially giving you reward. But you can't help it, you know. But now I know that the functions are just, they are all valuable in different ways. And like when I see someone like Dave, you know, I admire his type a lot compared to my type. And I see how there's just as much value in the other types, you know, as there is in, I think you guys understand what I'm trying to say here, you know. Now I'm just okay with having any type, and I really mean that. Because I really know that, maybe. I typed John Maxwell as FENE. I thought he seemed a little bit more OE, but I completely agree that he's OI. You know, as soon as you guys say it, I tend to believe you. And then you guys said that he is TE, and I see that as well. You know, it's just, he reminded me so much of John Paul DeJoria that I immediately wanted to jump to, well, this is just like him, you know. But maybe I'm a ESTP and I'm doing that intuition in a demon state. In fact, I think the best type would probably be double masculine ESTP, sleep last. You know, I'm gonna be honest. I don't see the problem with that type. No, I'm kidding. There's a lot that I don't know yet. You know, I don't know what those people go through. I just know what I kind of seem to be. I'm now doing psychology. My switch of understanding in terms of type kind of led me to the idea that maybe I should do psychology, because that just seems to be what my mind just wants to do. Often I make notes on my notepad on my iPhone of thoughts that I have, because sometimes I'll think of something that I really think might be valuable someday, and writing it sort of lets it exist. One thing I've started doing is putting a question mark after my notes, because I'll go back to an old note, I'll read it, and I'll have no idea what it meant. It'll sound really stupid. It'll sound really arrogant. It'll sound like it's attempting to be really profound, and it's funny how you can disgust your own self with the past version of you. I think I'll go on to the other questions, which are, what were those other questions? They were, what do you think is wrong with the world? What do you do on a regular basis? What's the worst thing that ever happened to you? What's the best thing that ever happened to you? So I'll start with, what do I think is wrong with the world? I think that your type material has taught me, and I've been doing my psychology major. I'm about halfway through this this semester. In high school, I listened to Jordan Peterson a lot. He became important to me, and I was raised in the church. You know, I'm starting to realize that what problems do I think are the worst with the world? Well, I think maybe people need to try to understand themselves more and try to be more honest about, and when I say more honest, I mean kind of like brutally honest. Honesty in spite of the false rewards of life. And I think that is what people need to do. The biggest problem with the world, I mean, what am I going to say? I think one big problem is a lot of people are believing in really cynical ideas, and especially in the university, there's a lot of cynical ideas about, how like human life doesn't have that much meaning, and how we are very evil people, or just as a species. And especially after maybe it's because of World War II, we're still really reeling. And as a result, there's a lot of, maybe a lot of people feel like there's just a huge lack of, like, spirit in the world. And, maybe we feel like there have been times when our culture was vibrant, and right now our culture just seems very shattered. And but that might be a problem of people being a prisoner of the moment, when really they're in the most, vibrant time psychologically, kind of like, in terms of our ability to create culture. We seem to be so rational that we're getting rid of religion and tradition. I just need to think about it more and kind of try to understand how to better put it. Because I can say this, I don't think that the biggest problems in the world are political. I think that's sort of like the symptom and not the cause. I think it all relates to stuff like type, stuff like, psychology, stuff like behavior, stuff like meaning, and stuff like, collective values. I guess that's probably a very FE answer, but I might not be FE. I'm not sure. Yeah, that tends to be what makes more sense to me, and it's important to me because I take it seriously and I really want to like help there. And I don't know. In reality, I want to be a leader when it comes to certain things like that. But I'm not there yet, and I'm still learning. I want to be helpful to, to other people, and I want to have a good purpose, And then the other question you guys asked is, what was, the best thing and the worst thing that's ever happened to you? The best thing that's ever happened to me is when I switched my major from computer science to psychology. But that's a very rational answer. In terms of my emotions, the best thing that's ever happened to me probably some of the friendships I've had and some of the communities I've gotten to be a part of were the best experiences of my life. I think FE might really like it when other people love you and they create kind of a web of other people being attached to you. In terms of feelings. The worst thing that's ever happened to me, I've had some stuff that I definitely perceived as very bad. Looking back, like recently I saw a Mark Twain quote, which was, how did he put it? Some of the worst things that ever happened to me, well, I butchered the quote. I could look it up. You guys could look it up later. But one good thing that's happened to me is I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Here's probably the worst thing that's happened to me is when I was in high school, I was feeling really torn between, I was doing Kung Fu and I was also doing church. And my identity felt very torn, and I felt a lot of dreadfulness every day. Some days I would come home and I would feel a feeling of dread for like 4 hours. And I remember it was just a problem of me saying yes to everything, In terms of church, I would say yes when it came to, do you want to come to church every week? Yes. Do you want to come to the Wednesday nights? Yes. Do you want to go to winter camp? Yes. Do you want to go to the summer camp? Yes. Do you want to be part of the discipleship program? Yes. Are you going to put your hands up in worship? Yes. Are you going to say this prayer? Yes. Are you going to... It was just a never-ending yes towards, that group and that identity of Christianity. Are you going to go to your school and preach? And I did a thing at my school where I got up and I talked to the whole class about my faith. And it was pretty traumatic. Because these were 21st century people. I'm talking to them, like they've never heard of the Bible before. And then with Kung Fu, it was like, well, do you want to try Kung Fu? Yes. Do you want to, punch the pad? Yes. Do you want to make friends at Kung Fu? Yes. Do you want to participate in the weekly Kung Fu discussions about the meaning of Kung Fu? Yes. Do you want to learn the forms of Kung Fu? Yes. Are you going to wear the uniform of Kung Fu? Yes. Are you going to dress in the uniform, and when you park your car and walk to the studio, are you going to wear your uniform? Yes. By the way, the uniform is completely blue, head to toe, Chinese martial arts outfit with the little connecting balls like Bruce Lee had, and a sash, and maybe a sword that you carry. Well, yes, I'll do that. Are you going to do outreach stuff for Kung Fu? Yes. Are you going to participate in Kung Fu performances? Yes. Are you going to talk the talk and walk the walk of Kung Fu? Yes. So I was saying yes to both sides, and I realized they were fundamentally incompatible because, if in high school you are, playing tennis throughout your high school years, and you're good at tennis, and you want your friends to come to your tennis matches, and you want people to know that you're doing tennis. And maybe you tell your grandparents that, well, I am doing something, I'm doing tennis. That's what I'm doing. And that's what I'm going at and pursuing, and because they don't want to hear that you're doing nothing. Nobody does. And so the problem is that when you do tennis, you are the tennis girl or the tennis guy. You are that's your identity, is what you have done. And the things I was doing were so opposite of each other, where they would expressly defy each other, and they were both becoming my identity. And that's fine, but as soon as it manifests and roots in the people you're around, it becomes real. Because you might see your pastor at the store, and you might see your shifu at the store. In Kung Fu, we would greet each other like this, and we would say ni hao and xie xie. It's like I was totally, the whole floor of my Kung Fu studio was bamboo. We had staffs and swords propped up against the wall. We would do jump kicks and flips, and we would bow, and we'd speak Chinese, and we would do ancient forms, and our teacher would say, you need to commit your life to Kung Fu and become part of the lineage. And I would nod my head. And that was one of the hardest things in my life, was this like feminine DE tearing of myself in half. And that was so painful, especially since I love the people at church. My pastor Chase, I came to love him so much, and he loved me. He was the coolest guy ever. Everybody wanted his attention. Of course, now you can see through it. You can look back and see it objectively. But at the time, this was the height of popularity. And Chase really liked me. He would play ping pong with me. And some days he was bored, and he would pick me up and we'd go play ping pong. And he'd maybe pick me and my best friend, one of my best friends, Noah, up, and we'd go get lunch and play ping pong at the church. And it was special preferential treatment to us as opposed to other kids, because we were able to talk spiritually. We thought spiritually. We were more mature. We had more self-control, but then we also had some social skills. Just, we were a little bit more popular. And so that felt so good. And then the same thing was happening at the church, where, I would go to Baltimore. I went to Baltimore at Kung Fu. I went to Baltimore 4 times to compete internationally. Well, it was national, but people flew from other countries to this tournament to compete in Kung Fu. And the pressure was so high, and we were all there together, and there were these other girls there that I kind of liked. And it was like this immense bonding experience of pressure and proving yourself and trying to be, a champion just for a day, and practicing so hard for it, and us all putting pressure on each other, and our teacher putting a massive amount of pressure on us, to be a great martial artist and to demonstrate the pride of our school, and to just the pressure, and then the girls were there looking, the pressure there, the competitive pressure between two students, the student-teacher tension, and now it's all sort of dissolved into that wasn't real. But at the time, it was just this mounting difficulty division between my identity. And that was very painful, Now I've kind of gotten past it, and I have more perspective on life. I realize that it wasn't bad compared to anything that anyone else goes through, but for me, it was difficult. It was it induced a lot of anxiety, and that's because I was weak in certain ways. And it's a lot more painful when something prods at, say, an open wound, a weakness, than a callus or a strong spot. So in a way, the most fragile of us are the most vulnerable. And when you are weakest, you experience the most pain. When you are a child, you experience the most pain. And as an adult, that's something you need to fix, because other adults are depending on you to be strong in crisis situations, like, say, a motor accident or something. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't a difficult time, Oh, it looks like I've just hit the hour mark. So I think I'll probably wrap up. I think that's probably enough footage and material for you guys to watch and understand my type. And I really appreciate you guys watching, and I appreciate your content. I think you guys should just keep up doing what you're doing, and yeah, me and my brother will be following you, and we'll be talking about what you guys are doing. We talk about the Thursday videos, and we're decently active on the official Facebook page. We sometimes submit to a survey where we compare our type to your type, and every week, and it's just fun, and it's really good. So maybe, Dave, if I could, obviously you guys do some audios. If I could, maybe, what is it like, having NI? Do I have NI? What similarities do you see between me and you? Kinda. How big a difference is play last and consume last? And maybe for Shannon, what is it like being, savior DE with the sleep and the consume animal? Obviously I could be consume last, I'm just not sure. And maybe I could call you guys if you felt that this video wasn't enough. But anyways, that's all I have. I really appreciate your work, and I look forward to whatever the future holds for the service. So with that said, I hope you guys have a great day, and keep it up.